So I would be put in a tub of very hot water and I would be told, the devil, you're a child of the devil lives inside of you, Maria. I had very abusive nuns because I would be punched in the face. I would have like chunks of hair pulled out of my head. You don't have a mother because God doesn't think you deserve a mother, and the devil's gonna get you, and you're a child of the devil, and your father doesn't really want you. So I always had to pretend everything was fine.
Wow.
I honestly felt like the emptiness was so empty that there was a voice inside of me screaming, help me, help me. I'm calling God every name.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what kind of God are you?
Hey, everybody. It's Rita Springer. Welcome again to the Rita Springer podcast. And worship is my weapon. The exciting thing today on today's podcast is I'm not in my little studio. I am actually remote, kind of doing a little things a little bit different, and really excited to be in the city of New York. And I thought, what better person to interview while I'm in New York, but one of my favorite people in the world, in the universe, Maria Durso. I was trying to think how many years have we known each other? I mean, Justice is 19, but didn't I meet you before?
Oh, way before you adopted. Maybe 25 years.
You think so?
Yeah, we did that Assembly of God, their
the Delaware
big conference
in Delaware.
right.
Yes, AG women's thing. That was way before Justice.
Yes.
And Hershey, PA.
Exactly. And I remember when you got on the keys, I thought, wow, she's famous. She's on Grant's Worship.
You got to tell that story.
Yeah, so we had a kid in our church, a young teenager, and he would make us worship CDs.
Yeah.
And he would...
Like illegally.
Right, illegally. And, but, you know, this is New York, so...
Yeah.
And he would put tons of your music on.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, it wasn't labeled. I didn't know.
Like mixtapes.
Mixtapes,
yeah.
Exactly. But there would be a lot of you.
Yeah.
Because he loved you. And then we loved you.
Yeah.
So then you're the worship leader at this huge, you know, conference. This, you know, what was it? The Hershey Park Convention Center.
Yes.
And
thousands of women there.
And exactly. And then you start to minister. And I was like, oh my God, she's famous. She's on Grant's Worship. And then I see you in the hallway of the hotel.
That's right.
And I went,
scared me half to death.
Rita Springer, you're famous. You're on Grant's.
I don't even think, though, Maria, you knew my name on those CDs.
No, I don't think so.
You only knew the name because I was at that
Exactly.
conference, and you could put a name to the voice.
Exactly.
That's what I thought was so sweet. I mean, that was just back in the day where you had those little CDRs, and you could, you know, copy songs onto these blank CDs, and he would make you these stack of
Absolutely.
mixed CDs, and that's how you had your worship.
Right. And you know how kids are. They have the latest, you know, music.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't. I think we used to have a WFME, and they, you know, had the real olds. And that's how we... You know, and your music, Rita, has been, you know, not only a blessing in our church, the worship songs. I've been undone by nobody writes music like you, Rita. My daughter-in-law, Lucy, said it last night. She said, you give pain a language. You know, when you write a song, you're not singing, you're a psalmist, and you get to the deepest parts of the heart. And I don't know if you know the story, but Lucy and Adam, our grandson, was born autistic, and it was devastating. I mean, he was autistic.
Yeah.
He would rock back and forth.
Yeah.
You know, you would put your hand in front of his eyes and he didn't blink, and it was devastating.
Yeah.
At the time, I didn't even know what it was. I
Yeah, that
remember
was probably way back when they were just kind of discovering.
100%. And I remember seeing a segment on 2020 and being so fearful. So I was babysitting one day and I saw this and I was just so
Wow.
taken back. Well, anyway, Justin is his name. And Lucy would play in the car over and over again, "It'll be worth it all.
Wow.
It'll be worth it all." And she would just cry out to God. And the first words that Justin ever said in his car seat, he starts to sing, "It'll be worth it all."
Wow. Wow.
And
I
from
love
there, he started to speak.
Wow.
And I believe that that was the anointing of God, because your music delivers people from whether it's sick, whether it's from death, whether it's from deep pain,
Yeah.
from abuse. There's something about what you carry that's so profound. And our grandson today, he's on the spectrum, but he's going for his MBA.
Yeah.
He is
Wow.
brilliant. So I believe that the beginnings of that healing.
Yeah. Wow. Hey, everybody, this is Rita Springer. Thank you so much for coming in and joining me on the podcast here with Worship Is My Weapon. There's a lot of things I'm doing right now. And one of the things that we provide alongside this podcast is a newsletter that we do that we send out to those of you that are subscribed, where I just answer questions and kind of give you information. And sometimes you guys are able to write in with questions that you just are curious about. We love that. We love that interaction. I actually love to interact with those of you that want something a little bit more beyond the podcast. So if that's you, make sure to get our newsletter, sign up for our newsletter, subscribe to the newsletter, and stay in touch with all the things that we're doing here on the podcast in that newsletter. Well, that's why it's like I wanted to interview you, because when you have a podcast called Worship Is My Weapon, when I think about you, Maria, I'm like, there are so many things that you've done in your life, in your story, through your testimony, that I've been so inspired by. But I mean, even recently, I think about your, meeting you there and hearing your testimony. Like even back then at the Pennsylvania's Delaware State thing, for those women, I didn't know your whole testimony. I just got bits and pieces of your testimony. And then when we became friends, you kind of shared a little bit more. And I'll never forget you telling me the story of the church when I came to visit Christ Tabernacle, is what the church was called before it was Saints. And you would talk about the prayer team that you had there, and you talked about Adam, your firstborn son, and you talked about, his youth and his coming to the Lord. And I'll never forget you talking about God calling you to a fast for his soul, and God saying to you, a life for a life. And I think what you survived on bread and water for I don't know how long. But I remember just in COVID, when Justice was having such a hard time, the Lord would bring to mind just the sound of your voice saying, a life for a life, and just fasting and praying for our children. And I think for me, and I get emotional when I think about you, because not having a mom for so long, the emphasis of true mothering that you do has just had such an impact in my life. Wow. And watching you mother your congregation and mothering your family, and how you have been such the voice of a true mother over my life, because you understand how to go to war in worship. And you're not a musician, you're not a worship leader, but you've known it from the perspective of having lived punching through walls in intercession. And I was just so excited to, I've been trying to convince you to come on this podcast, and I'm like, I had to go to New York to do it. But I want you to just share a little bit of your testimony, anything you want to share with us. But your testimony is so powerful in just being almost a rejected daughter, and how the Lord pulled you in as a daughter. Can you just kind of share with us?
Well, I was thinking of this just the other day. I don't dwell on it too much.
Yeah.
Tomorrow is Mother's Day.
Yeah.
And there's nothing like a mother.
Yeah.
No one loves like a mother.
No.
No one will sacrifice like a mother.
Yeah.
And how important the touch of a mother is.
Yeah.
But my mom was 5 months pregnant, and they discovered she had an inoperable brain tumor. And she went into a coma and she died. And as she's slipping into eternity, the doctor opens her up and takes out this 2.5-pound baby girl. I mean, this is 1950.
Yeah.
I mean, what are
crazy
the
to think
odds
you
in
survived.
1950 for a 2.5-pound baby to survive? And basically, my mother was only 29 years old.
Wow.
She was the love of my father's life. He owned a nightclub. My mother sang in a nightclub. She was a nightclub singer. And they desperately wanted to have a baby. And for 12 long years, they tried. And they were ecstatic. And now this happens. So the day my mother died, my father basically died. He checked out. And I'm put in the New York Foundling Hospital. That's where they put orphans. And I have no name on my birth certificate. If I show you my birth certificate, my name is Baby. And then in writing is my name, Maria. I was not named until I was 8 months old. I was in the hospital for 8 months. I was very, very sickly. I got severe case of chicken pox, staph infection, so just to get my weight.
Yeah.
And, and no one named me because nobody ever thought I would live.
And your dad wasn't like
He
there.
was, my father, he was a good man. But, there was no such term as single parents in 1950, especially not a male.
Yeah.
What is he going to do with me? So he takes me home. We lived in the village. And he would get babysitters, nannies, and I have real memories in the crib.
Wow.
I have memories of being fearful to wet my pajamas because I was afraid I was going to bother my father. I would, if I had an accident, I would pull up the blanket real tight. I was aware of that at like 2 years old. And at 2.5, my father put me in a religious boarding school. And
At 2.5 years old.
Yeah. I remember being in the car. My father had a big gray Chrysler, and I felt like I was in a battleship. And I was in the back seat. And he pulled into this huge circular gravel driveway.
Yeah.
And he pulled in front of these huge convent doors. And he got me out, and he got my little suitcase. And I remember him saying, Maria, I'll come and see you when I can. And that was very few and far between. And my father really thought he was doing the best thing.
Yeah.
I was
Because
going
he wasn't abusive to
No,
you. Yeah.
no. He was depressed.
Yeah. You were just
He
aware
drank.
of his trauma. Yeah.
His best friend was a glass of scotch, and he would look out the window in Manhattan, and he would cry for my mother.
Wow.
I remember that. He was very sad. And he thought if I put you in this boarding school, I'm going to connect with women. I had no women in my life. I was going to be taught about God. I was going to be given 3 square meals a day. And
was it a Catholic school? Was it a Catholic?
It was, yeah. I usually don't even mention it because there were so many amazing Catholics.
Yeah.
What happened to me in this boarding school was very unfortunate by these nuns.
Yeah.
But I know there's many wonderful nuns. So I like a little careful not to label, because then people go on a bandwagon and make every priest and nun bad, and every pastor is bad if one pastor falls, and it's all of that stuff. And it wasn't, there was some that were, I think, the mother superior was very kind, but I had very abusive nuns, and I'm left-handed. So I would be put in a tub of very hot water, and I would be told, the devil, you're a child of the devil. The devil lives inside of you, Maria. And they'd be dunking me, you don't have a mother because God doesn't think you deserve a mother. And I mean, that was the sentence that shaped my life. You don't deserve. I would be given like milk of magnesia, and I'd be forbidden to go to the bathroom. And if I went, I would get beaten, and I would have nightmares. And, I would take out shampoo and in my sleep run up and down the dormitory and just like holy water. Like there was
Wow.
evil in that place. The little girls, they would go home every weekend.
Yeah.
I was the only one that stayed. They had mothers and fathers. This was a wealthy place.
Yeah.
So when they went home, and even in the summer, I was left there, and I would be molested.
Yeah.
I would be given a little glass of wine, and I would wake up in bed with someone that represented God.
Yeah.
And if my father did come, I was told, you better not tell, because the devil's going to get you, and you're a child of the devil, and your father doesn't really want you. So I always had to pretend everything was fine.
Yeah.
Until, the little girls, they would come back every weekend from being with their mommy and daddy, and they would open their suitcase, and their suitcase smelled like love to me.
Yeah.
And they would take out a little card, and they would put it on their dresser, and the card would say, I'll see you next week. And, but the thing I wanted more than anything, they always had a lipstick mark.
From their parents. Yeah.
And that lipstick mark meant that, no one was going to beat them or molest them. But I didn't have that because God didn't think I deserved that. So I had such a skewed view of God. I was a misfit. I was ugly. I was, and I think about it now, like my mother never touched me. I don't know what it is.
Right.
To have a mother's touch. And all I've ever wanted was to be what I didn't have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I don't ever, I know some people, they say, well, I never had that, so why should I?
Yeah.
But I'm the opposite. Like I know that hole, that dark, and like, how could we ever withhold that if you're able to give it?
Right.
And there's such a satisfaction in giving it.
Yeah.
My father discovered the abuse when I was 10.
So from 2.5 all the way to 10, you're living there.
There, yeah.
Good grief.
Yeah, that's all your...
And how did he discover that? Did you finally tell him?
No, he showed up unexpectedly, and I had marks on me. I had a black eye, because I would be punched in the face.
Whoa.
I would have like chunks of hair pulled out of my head, and then my father realized. So he never sent me back, and now he puts me in a co-ed school. And I had never been around boys. So I am in, Chelsea area, and the school, there was already like little gangs. New York at that time was no joke.
Yeah.
And so I'm the new girl in the school, and because I'm the new girl, the boys liked me. And because the boys liked me, the girls hated me.
Oh, geez.
And the girls, it was very inner city.
Yeah.
And they were like Philistines. Like they were the biggest, baddest girls you ever saw in your life. And like I was this tiny little 80 pound,
Yeah.
and every day they would chase me home. And I learned how to be an Olympic runner. I was like terrified. And they caught me one day and they beat me up. And I didn't know how to fight then. They ripped my blouse, and, with my right hand, I was holding my...
Yeah.
I'm sorry, with my left hand, I was holding my blouse closed. But with my right hand, I had to fight, and my thumb snapped back. And I I didn't know how to fight then. And
Yeah.
my thumb broke. As a matter of fact, a few months ago, I have a scar. They had to take the bone out. From
Because of
10 years
that?
old to 73, I always had pain in my hand because it was never set right.
Yeah.
I couldn't go home and tell my father my thumb was broken because he was
Yeah.
busy looking out the window crying for my mother. I was a bother, so it had to heal on its own. And I oftentimes say there's things in our lives, they've never been set right.
Yeah.
They've never been set right. And there's a certain movement or a smell
Yeah.
or a song or a block.
Yeah.
I couldn't understand why I couldn't stand the smell of wine. It wasn't until I was married already and probably in my 30s that I got this memory of being given that glass of wine
By the nuns.
by the nuns as that little girl. And that's what led me to be molested,
Wow.
because it would put me to sleep.
Wow. Do you feel like, though, Maria, sometimes, I mean, I don't when you talk about the things that God allows, it's inconceivable to me to ever believe that God that God does things.
Right.
But there is an allowance that, circumstance and being in life and being in a situation like, you were brought up in, there is the trauma and all the stuff there. But that is actually becomes your story. Do you think you would have ever found God the way you ended up finding God if you didn't have that journey?
I don't believe so. Number one, there are things God permits
Yeah.
because we're all given free will.
Yeah.
Those nuns had a free will.
Yes.
Did God want it to happen? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
And I had to learn that God is good.
Yeah.
I don't think, I don't know if I was angry at God as much as always struggling to try to understand why God didn't love me. Like I was always odd.
Because that was your source of the why.
Yeah. And then I ended up in the city and, with the Philistines, and I became just like them, tough. And here I am, 11 years old. I'm in the meatpacking district, which is very chic now.
Yeah.
But at the time, they would really slaughter the animals. That's where they, had the slaughterhouses.
Yeah.
And I would, have a pint of 99-cent cheap wine. I'm 11 years old. I'm unconscious, lying on the cement with the blood of the animals. I've been picked up by cops, brought home. My father screaming, "Look what she's doing to me."
Yeah. But
and
he didn't know what to do with you.
he didn't know what to do with me. He didn't. And, at first I felt terrible, but then there was part of me, I was accepted. And then I just start, smoking weed at like
Right.
12 years old. And, by the time I'm 14,
So wild to me.
I'm taking second alls and Tuinals and Quaaludes. And then, it's this, it's the 60s, it's, the
Yeah.
70s. And, there's acid and mescaline and angel dust. And then by the time I'm 18, I'm shooting heroin, and I've overdosed on heroin 3 times.
Oh my
I've been hit
God.
by a car. I tried to commit suicide. I've been arrested.
How does somebody like this find the Lord? My mentorship program that I do, for years I used to have the dive school where I would pull creatives in and spend a week mentoring them. And now what I find works best with my kind of busy schedule is I do one-on-one mentorships. You can sign up for those. On the RitaSpringer.com website, there's a mentorship tag. You could just click that, and then that application will come up. Basically, what the mentorship program is anybody wanting a one-on-one. They're 4-week, 1-hour sessions that I do consecutively, one after the other by week. And we just schedule you on a Monday or Tuesday. I only take around 10 a month is what I can handle. But it has been just a beautiful, beautiful season of just continuing to just encourage worship leaders and creatives and songwriters. Really, you come to the table with the subjects that you want to talk about, questions that you have. Maybe they're cultivating worship teams on staff in your staff position as a worship leader. Maybe it's just a songwriting course that you kind of won in those 4 weeks. Maybe you're going through some struggles on staff or struggles in your life that you just want wisdom in walking out. That is what that mentorship program is about and for. And it is really my most favorite thing to do. I love getting to meet those of you. Some of you are all over the world, and my Monday and Tuesdays are my funnest days of the week because I get to interact with you and find out about your life and what God's doing with you and your call to the creative. And so if you are looking for that kind of a mentorship program, again, go to ritaspringer.com. Click that tab up there that says mentorship, and you can sign up for that, and we'll get you started on that program.
So I meet a man, Michael Durso, and I fell in love with him, and he fell in love with me. And
he's kind of wild too.
He's wild, yeah. But to me, he's like an upstanding citizen because he's really not shooting up. He's snorting coke, and he's, smoking weed, and he's, doing acid and so forth and so on. And, he's doing all of that stuff.
But he's got a mother and a father.
He's got a mother and a father. He's got a loving home. They have a family business.
Yeah.
And he kind of really makes me stop with the heroin. And, but I loved him and he loved me. And we just...
What do you feel like attracted you to Michael?
Well,
I've always been curious about that because you guys are such an incredible couple. But what do you think was the thing unsaved that just really was the reason why you guys were together?
Well, number one, he was beautiful. What a beautiful face and person.
Yeah.
My husband is the sweetest,
He is.
gentlest, kindest. Even when he was in his, hippie state, like a crazy state, there was always this kindness. And you know what? I knew he loved me. And that just attracted me to him. So we decide we're going to live together.
Yeah.
And at this time, I found my father dead and in the apartment, and he left me a ton of money. So, I worked for Bergdorf Goodman. I did famous people's makeup. I was in all this jet set living. I never waited online to get into a club. I've been in the centerfold of the Daily News, underground clubbing.
Yeah.
I was an it girl. I was an it girl. And so I buy all this designer luggage.
Yeah.
Nowhere to go, but I have designer luggage. I have humongous diamond earrings and all these chains. I mean, I had more chains than Snoop Dogg. And, I had it. If it was on the cover of Cosmopolitan.
You had it.
Yeah, I had it. That was like my satisfaction, my identity.
Yeah.
But I'm so empty. And then I meet Michael Durso, and we're going to move in together and get this beautiful apartment, and we go to Bloomingdale's and we get this furniture, and it's going to take 2 weeks to deliver. So we decide in the 2 weeks, for 10 days, we're going to go to Mexico.
And how old are you guys at this point?
25. We're 25. And so I smuggle in about $3,000 worth of coke.
Of course you did.
And I have my bathing suit on the cover of Cosmopolitan, Norma Kamali. It was cut down to here, up to here. It was, I was pretty lewd. And we get to this paradise, and the emptiness just doesn't go away.
Wow.
And I can't understand that because I have the man of my dreams.
You got
I have
the apartment of your dreams.
I have designer luggage, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
I have the bathing suit,
Yeah.
and I'm thin.
Yeah.
I look good in it. And I'm empty.
Mm.
And as the days go on, I honestly felt like the emptiness was so empty that there was a voice inside of me screaming, help me, help me. And I didn't know what it was, and I couldn't understand. Like, why does nothing ever fill me? Of course, I don't know that there's a space made inside of us that's for God and God alone. Nothing could fill that space.
Yeah.
So one night, my boyfriend goes out for a walk on the beach, and I'm in the room, and I'm looking at everything I have, and I decide to talk to God. But I'm cursing him out. I am calling him every name in the book.
Wait, prior to this, though, is God even on? Is he anywhere in your, outside of maybe being, used in profanity? Is he anywhere in your life? Like, have you ever thought about praying to him?
So I met these people that told me they were born again. And this was probably like a year before.
Yeah.
And I remember with my attitude, I was like, oh, you're born again and I'm not born again.
Yeah.
Miss Self-Righteous and proud and arrogant and, like that, like gnawed at me.
Okay.
Because I saw a change
so it was
in
the
them.
back of your mind.
It was
a little
in the
bit.
very
Yeah,
back.
Yeah.
In the very back. But so this night I'm in the hotel room and I'm shaking my fist. I'm calling God every name.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what kind of God are you?
Yeah.
What is this thing called life? I feel like I'm shaking my tail. Like I'm just in a circle spinning.
In a frenzy.
In a frenzy. And this holy God in this room says my name. And it was not audible. It was internal.
And you hear this.
I hear it inside. The emptiness.
It's foreign to you because you've never heard this before.
Never. It fills me up like, Maria, give me your life before it's too late.
Wow.
And I knew this was God. I didn't know his name was Jesus. I didn't really know anything, but I knew in that moment, whatever this was, I was trading everything.
Because you could feel it.
I could feel it. Something happened to me. It was divine. It was otherworldly. It was no drug. Could give you this sense, this unbelievable centering. I can't even explain it. So my boyfriend comes back in the room and I say, Michael, when we go back home, will you go to church with me?
Yeah.
He says, church? He's like, you need to smoke a joint, girl. You need to get high. Like, what? Church? And I go, I need God in my life. And now we have 5 more days to the 10-day vacation. And I turn into Mother Teresa.
Oh, my gosh.
I don't want to get high anymore. I don't want to sleep with him. I know that it's wrong. I know the drugs are wrong. I know my filthy mouth is wrong. I know the string bikini and lack thereof is wrong. I know this is all wrong. And I don't want it anymore. I want him. I don't care about being in the centerfold of the Daily News.
But how are you reconciling that in that moment without knowing? I mean, you don't have the only religious language you have is the abuse by, the
I don't
nuns. How do you, or do you have a Bible lying around?
Nothing.
Wow.
No Bible, nothing. So we're leaving this beautiful paradise and they offer me a job. Because they know we're not married, and they said you could stay here, be a hostess.
At the place you were
at the paradise. You could show people around, free room and board, you make tips. And I turned to my boyfriend, and I said, that's the devil. He doesn't want me to go home and go to church. And my boyfriend's thinking, First, I'm hearing from God, and now I know who the devil is. Like, he's thinking, I'm dumping her. I'm thinking I'm dumping him. So we get home to the apartment, and we have 2 mattresses on the floor, and we have a telephone, the big.
Yeah, with the cord and everything.
And I have to call someone. I can't shake this. This was earth-shattering for me. I knew it wasn't my imagination. I knew it wasn't a drug.
Yeah.
I felt different. And I called my friend Barbara, and she was a drug addict just like me when I left 10 days ago.
Yeah.
And I go, Barbara, I got to talk to you. And she said, no, I got to talk to you. And we go back and forth. She says, hurry up. And I said, Barbara, I need God in my life. And Barbara says, praise the Lord. I said, praise the who? What does that mean? And she says, Maria, while you were gone, some hippie preached the gospel to her and 30 of our friends. Yeah. And she said, and after we accepted Christ, we held hands and we said, Lord,
this is just wild.
Save Michael and Maria in Mexico. And that was the night that voice spoke to me. That's why I know God is a prayer answering God.
Yeah.
That's why I know that our prayers go where we can go.
Yeah.
And that God is never not working.
Right. I think that's what's so, to me, it's almost mind blowing. Because I was born and raised with Christian parents. So that finding that God has to go over and about over them and to find you is so miraculous to me. It's always just been one of the most miraculous stories I've ever heard, because if God could find you, he could find anybody.
And like you said, in the meeting last night, when you first came to Christ Tabernacle, I introduced everyone to you
it was just
by their testimonies.
Oh, I've never have anybody done that before.
Oh, they were lesbians, he was a drug dealer. Oh yeah, they were divorced and got remarried.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he was a dropout and now he's, it's all of that, because we see everybody like Michael and Maria. If God could do it, and that night, listen, my friend invited us to this little Pentecostal church.
Yeah.
And we went. Michael did not want to go.
Yeah.
But he figured, I'll go get this out of my system. We'll resume business as usual. He has cocaine in his pocket. And the pastor said, this little church, if you were to die tonight, would you know where you would spend eternity? And I knew where I was going. And I don't even know how I got to the front.
But you go down there.
And my boyfriend was annoyed through the whole service. He wanted to leave. But when I looked to my right, he was kneeling next to me, sobbing, weeping. And the pastor got the oil. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, I saw The Exorcist.
Yeah.
My head's probably going to spin around a few times. I probably have a few demons in there. And he said, you're going to be known as the foolish things of this world to confound the wise.
That's what he says to you guys.
That's what he says. And no truer words, because if you would ever say how, it's confounding. It's only God. Yeah. There's no book to write. It's only God. Only God could change people's lives. Nobody. Sermons don't change people's lives. God in the sermon changes people's lives. God in the song. Yeah. He's the songwriter.
Yeah.
You're the vessel singing the song.
Yeah.
It's him. And we got married. We knew we had to get married. We went home that night. We separated the mattresses. We threw out all the drugs, drug paraphernalia, music, magazine, everything, clothes, thousands of dollars, gold cocaine spoons, all of it down the incinerator.
That's just insane.
We had like a total, and that was the 70s. That's when the Jesus movement. Mm-hmm. And I believe we were part of that revival. That's what God was doing.
Yeah.
And we got married on a rainy Monday in City Hall. And
but you're not like saved in that. When you get saved, back then, were you like, what do we do for the ministry? Do we go into the ministry? Because you got your careers kind of going.
We just went to church, There was a little church not far from here. My husband worked on Sundays, and I didn't drive. And I had Adam, and I would put him on a bike, and I would
Yeah.
bring him to church. I would go in the winter, and we got involved. And then someone invited us to Brooklyn Tabernacle, and then everything changed because I walked into the presence of God,
Okay.
and this was it. Like, there was love, there was different kinds of people, and it was small then. It wasn't a big
Yeah.
church, and I learned to drive.
And that changed your church experience.
Yes.
The Brooklyn
Oh,
Tab.
100%. I learned how to pray.
Yeah.
I learned it was nothing but God,
Yeah.
and then we were called. Pastor Simbala was given a building, and it was by his uncle, and said, if you find somebody to pastor this church, I'll give it to you. And they did. And everyone in Brooklyn thought that they were the ones that were going to be called. We never, ever entered our minds that God would call us in the ministry.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? And I just look back and I just say, God.
Yeah. It really is quite fascinating how you and Michael's life, I mean, it takes such a drastic turn into salvation. But then when I look at the symbolism of how here's this kid that's born, never having been touched by her mother dies while she's 5 months pregnant. You have to fight your way, claw your way just to survival. And then you become this warrior in prayer. Like, I've never known a fighter like you in prayer. And your church was pretty much based on
Yes.
prayer.
Well, I have to tell you, so I'm feeling that God wants to use me
Yeah.
in prayer. But, I was great praying in the prayer meeting, but when I was alone,
Yeah.
because I'm so OCD, like, I would sit down ready to pray, and then I would see a piece of dust in the corner and I'd be like, gotta get, okay, God. Did I defrost the
Right,
chicken?
right.
Gotta go defrost. Okay. Okay, God. Did I get the mail? Gotta get the mail. And this is every day.
Yeah.
And then one day, I go to this Brooklyn Tabernacle prayer conference, and the speaker, who was Brother Johansson, he was the president of Elam Bible Institute, and he called me out, and he said, God wants to make you an intercessor. And I'm thinking to myself, me? I mean, I can't pray 5 minutes straight alone. Like,
Right.
So I come home, and I have this big clock in my kitchen, and I'm just sitting there, and I feel the Holy Spirit say to me, you see that clock? And I'm like, yeah. And he says, nobody buys the clock because of the mechanism. They buy the clock because of the size and the shape and the color, but nobody says, ooh, what a mechanism. He says, but that mechanism, without that mechanism, that clock is useless. And then he says, that's what prayer is to the church.
Wow.
That's the mechanism. It's like when you buy a house, you don't buy a house because of the boiler room.
Right.
You don't say, ooh, what a boiler room.
Yeah.
But when it's cold, everyone looks to the boiler room.
Yeah.
He says, and unless you heat up that boiler room with prayer, and a boiler needs a constant flame.
Yeah.
It needs fresh water, and it needs deliveries of oil, fresh oil. And he said, because when we started the church, I noticed that the sermons were good, but they were kind of like, they didn't have any penetration. Like, why did Brooklyn Tabernacle have penetration? And it was those little old people that would come to pray after I was their youth, leader.
Yeah.
I was lay, he had a little youth ministry, and they would say, Sister Maria, I'm praying for you. And I would think, oh, that's nice. But I didn't realize they They were the boiler room.
Yeah.
They were the mechanism.
Wow.
It wasn't
Wow.
anything
Yeah.
else. Yes, God anointed the music because God anointed it. God anointed those sermons because God. And then I just started a little prayer band. And for years, we would pray
Yeah.
till all hours of the morning. And it would be hard. I mean, like we felt no breakthrough. And I would say we'd pray for our youth.
Yeah.
And you know, the youth were dead, you know, bowling. You know, but I'm of the persuasion that God says in the last days, I will
Yeah.
pour out my spirit on all flesh, and your sons and daughters, they're going to prophesy and see visions. And I would say, we got to pray. We got to pray. Meanwhile, my kids were nowhere with God.
How many ladies were down that basement praying?
So we probably, at the time, we probably had like maybe 15.
Yeah.
We might have had a guy sprinkled in it, but it was. And what's funny is Brenda and Doreen,
Who are still there.
who are still there. Brenda leads the prayer ministry now.
Oh, she's prayed last night. It was amazing.
You know, they're amazing.
Yeah.
But how we started was I met her mother, Alicia, at Brooklyn Tabernacle when we started Christ Tab. She came with us, and none of her 5 kids were saved. She would leave her door open, her apartment door open every Monday, and we would come in every Monday and intercede for those kids. And we would see the kids, and they would give us the dirtiest looks. One of the sisters told me, go yourself.
Yeah.
And all of them get saved,
Yeah.
and they become intercessors.
And join you down there praying.
Join.
It's yeah. I just, in all of my years of traveling with churches, I think that's why your story is such a, man, it's just so impacting to
But
my
I was
life.
saved from people praying.
And I think it's why, and I think it's been my most frustrating thing with the church as a whole, that, you know, we put worship off in one room and we put prayer off in another, and we segregate all these different departments, and we don't really see that without the core of intercession and prayer and praise, nothing's going to get accomplished.
You think it will.
Yeah.
It sounds good. You go, ooh, she could sing.
Yeah.
Ooh, preach.
Yes.
But you leave the same.
Yeah.
The needle hasn't been moved.
Right.
But then I remember this visual. So we're in Christ Tabernacle, our little building, and this guy comes. I don't know where we got him from. He's a preacher, and he's whipping the microphone cord. You know, he's doing everything to try to like, and here we are, New Yorkers, and we're like this.
Right.
And the next week, we have this man, Brother Garlock. He worked with YWAM, and he was a missionary.
Yeah.
And he gets up and he says, Jesus loves us. The whole church ran to the altar sobbing. God just falls. And I learned early on, it wasn't in anything else.
Yeah.
Either you carry his presence or you don't.
Yeah.
You could try to fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
And are there good sermons? Absolutely. Are there amazing communicators? Absolutely. But are they God's sermons? Because when I hear we need him, and the church just breaks, and we allow God to just do what only God can do.
If you ever want to donate to the podcast and to ways that you can help support the ministry, we have a Venmo attached to this as well that is with my nonprofit Wearing Justice. You're more than welcome to donate to that, which is greatly appreciated. So where are we lost, do you think, in the church, where the presence of God isn't our epicenter? I mean, because it breaks my heart when I think about just the power of prayer and the power of your testimonies and your stories. And I'm honestly, you guys will remember this because I think it was something so memorable for you. But, you know, when I first got to your, you know, the House of Christ tab, I had a whole vision of just fresh baked bread. Like I could just smell fresh baked bread. And it was just so prophetic to me. And I said it to you guys because I'd never encountered a place where, yeah, the introductions were made from what these people had come from into but there was no shame attached to any of it.
Right.
Nobody was ashamed of their pasts.
Right.
Nobody, it was, you would say, meet so-and-so, they used to be a transvestite down, blah, 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 blah. And the person would respond, I did. And then the Lord saved me with this wide-eyed celebration of what the Lord had done for them. And I remember just thinking, don't ever let this get lost. I don't want this to be lost on me. This, real segment of life where there's no pretense in just who God comes in and snatches and heals. It was as if the Lord was just coming doing these things because people were just letting him do it. And I feel sometimes frustrated by the fact that have we lost the presence of God? And what is the thing that we're losing when the presence of God vacates a place and we forget to pray?
Right.
That was just so much of your storyline.
Yeah.
And intercession, what has happened to the church, do you think, that has caused us to lose our epicenter of prayer?
I think that, I don't remember who said it, but they said that it's unfortunate in the American church, you can have church and God not be there and you don't even realize it.
Yeah.
And that's so scary. I think that, I think when the how-to books started to come out.
Wow.
Instead of books like Humility by Andrew Murray or R.T. Kendall and those kind of the Pursuit of God and all of that
wow,
spiritual discipleship. I forget. I'm reading it. I think that when we lose sight of that, and how to build your church and how to get people to give, and it's not by might or power.
Yeah,
it's by my Spirit.
Yeah,
and we can never lose that. We've unfortunately, Christianity has become cool, and but we're not supposed to be cool, are we?
Yeah.
We're supposed to be hot for Him.
Yeah.
And unashamed. And listen, we of all people know we're nothing. We are dust. I put my face to the ground.
Yeah.
I say, God, unless you come, and if I don't sense that, I'm scared.
Yeah.
See, I'm afraid to be without the presence of God. Yeah. And there's no celebrity, there's no singer, there's none of that. They have to have the touch of God on them, and that's what we know. It's like an old recipe.
Yeah.
You could serve it on different plates, but those ingredients better be in the dish.
Well, I've said probably a couple times on this podcast that, I've thought a lot about how when God gets in your bones, when he's in there so deep, and man, I think if this is all bogus, I'm just going to go down with the ship. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because when it's that deep inside your bones, what does
Peter say?
Where else am I going to go?
Where else am I going to go?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
And I'm wondering too if it's that thing, because
it's that thing.
How can you not want this? How can you not?
Right.
To a younger generation, and I'm like, they don't have him in their bones yet.
But they want him. See, I am seeing now something shifting. People want God. They don't want to be entertained.
Yeah.
That season is.
Yeah.
That ship has sailed. They
you
want.
Think there's a hunger for the real
yes,
thing
I
coming
do.
back.
I do. And I think that there's a revival in the air.
Okay.
As listen, where sin abounds, grace doth even much more abound. And I do think that there's been such an absence of his presence. No, I need him. And they're welcoming the truth.
Well, you said something even in your testimony when he said your name, and just before he said your name in Mexico, you were aware that nothing else could fill you. And
Nothing.
I'm almost wondering if that is really what we're encountering.
We are
Is
encountering.
that people are just like nothing
Right.
else is fulfilling.
And I don't want to be against any church.
Yeah.
I think that they think that that's what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
They just don't know. You got the clock. You don't have the mechanism.
Got it.
You need the mechanism.
Yeah.
You need the boiler room. The living room's beautiful,
Yeah.
but
That's
that's not
so
what's going to
good.
change people.
Now, what about you are such, again, I was telling you in the kitchen earlier that, Christine Kane said to me something a couple weeks ago that I was like, oof, I need to really unpack that. And she said, we're coming into a season with women where we can't just be the daughters of Zion. We have to become the mothers of Israel. And I thought, whoa, that's a pretty powerful statement. You are such a mother. To me, you are such a mother of Israel and those things. And the way that you've championed the women that you've led for so many years to the core of intercession. You've always gone back to that, And I've even noticed with you that if the enemy tries to steal anything from you or try to come at you in any way, it's almost to clamp down on your right of intercession and your pathway to the power of prayer. And that's an obvious, well, that's obviously hell trying to come at you, because it's such a place of power for you. How do you, or maybe even if it's revelation from that place of that central location of a true mother in you, where do you think the Lord is leading and calling women in the church to rise up to right
The
now?
Apostle Paul says, I was as a breastfeeding mother. He said, I not only shared the gospel, he says, but I shared my very life as well.
Yeah.
And I think as women, first of all, we're natural nurturers.
Yeah.
We naturally love. We naturally want to defend. We naturally want to sacrifice and lay our life down naturally. We just have that thing in us.
Yeah.
Now, has the enemy come to say, me first? What about you? Spa day, blah, blah.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But that thing, has to be resurrected. Almost like Isaac's wells, like the Philistines' dirt, they have to be unearthed where women need to give out. I oftentimes say this, it's not that we're too empty, we're too full.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
We have everything flowing in, conference after conference. But we're like the Dead Sea, everything flows in, but those nutrients, what are you doing? You're not giving it out. We need to take people to our spiritual breast. I don't care how young you are in the Lord. Listen, in the Song of Solomon, the siblings say, our younger sister, she's in trouble. What could we do to help her? My breasts are like towers.
Yeah.
I'm a double D. But she's in a training bra.
Yeah.
And we have to because even though you're a double A, someone's in a training bra.
Yeah.
So everything you take in, you should be giving out.
Yeah.
So think about a breastfeeding mother.
Yeah.
Right? In interdependent relationships form. It's the baby and the mother. It's the young and the old. And if the mother doesn't release what the baby needs, she's in pain. Yeah. But if the baby doesn't get fed, the baby's in pain. In a breastfeeding mother, she knows when her baby's hungry. She doesn't have to be in the room. She doesn't even have to be in the house.
Yeah.
Her breasts fill up.
Yeah.
That's what happens when we're attached to one another in the spirit.
Yeah.
Right? My sister, she lives in Hawaii, but she needs a word from God. Let me be quickened and text her. Right? A baby, you think the baby cares what the mother's breasts look like?
Yeah.
And the more the mother breastfeeds, the more milk comes
she
in.
Produces,
right? Is it the widow, she says to Elisha, she says, they're going to take my children, and they're going to take my children. What do I do? And he says, well, what do you have in your house? I mean, he was the prophet. He could have given her something.
Yeah.
And she goes, well, I only have like this little bit of oil. He says, well, go in the neighborhood and bring in all the empty jars and start pouring. And the more she poured, the more oil she had.
Yeah.
But notice when she stopped pouring, the oil stopped flowing.
Yeah.
And if you want to dry up, stop breastfeeding. And this is what the enemy has so brought the world into the church of me.
Yeah.
What's God going to do for you?
Yes.
What's your purpose? What's
Yeah.
your destiny? Our destiny is to be conformed to the image and likeness of Christ. You're going to end up looking like Jesus, minus the mustache.
Yeah.
Hook or crook, you're going to end up looking like Jesus. That's what God has for us. And as women, how do you breastfeed? You got to take your shirt off.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need to stop this pretending and all these walls up.
Yeah.
And share your strengths and your weaknesses.
Yeah.
We're all a mess,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, and I think it's why I've just tried to be so honest and so open.
You're so honest. Your songs are so honest.
It's like
Shaking my fist.
Yeah,
I
just
think
get
he
rid
is.
of the
I think he is.
pretense.
Get rid
Yeah.
of it. Who doesn't go through this?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I love that because I think we need to be, I think women just need to be challenged to come back to start pouring out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I don't care how young you are in the Lord. Stop waiting till you have a master's in breastology.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's give, because if we give out the little we have,
Yeah.
we'll be filled up with
Well, it
more.
was you who, you were the first woman that I ever heard, I think, preach on what El Shaddai means.
Mm-hmm.
Years and years ago, I remember sitting there. I'm pretty sure it was you when you talked about that it's the many-breasted one. And to think that as women, the illustrations that you're using in that is so powerful. But then to go back to the full-blown original source, that he is the supplier of everything, that El Shaddai is the fully breasted one.
And men should be, Paul, the Apostle Paul, he brought Timothy, because you know what? The truth is, every Mary needs an Elizabeth.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
When Mary met Elizabeth, the baby leaped in Elizabeth's womb, because Mary confirmed that what Elizabeth was carrying was alive. But Elizabeth needed Mary. Mary needed Elizabeth. Right. Paul needed Timothy, but Timothy needed Paul.
Yeah.
Ruth needed Naomi, but Naomi needed Ruth.
That's right.
So we need to stop with this, the young, the old. Right. We need one another.
Yeah.
That's where life is generated.
Yeah.
So important.
Yeah, it is so important. So here's my kind of final rundown of questions for you. You're in your early 70s. When you think about what more the Lord will do you still dream?
You know what? I'm going to be very honest.
Yeah.
I've never dreamed. I've never dreamed. God says to do it, and I do it. God says call, and I call.
Yeah.
God says go there and speak, and I do it. I'm not a dreamer.
Yeah.
Every day I take my orders from him.
Yeah.
I have nothing to dream about. There's nothing in me to dream.
Yeah.
It's him. I just obey him. It's as simple as that. It's not complicated.
Yeah. And
when he's done, he's done.
Yeah.
If nobody ever calls me again to speak, well, you know what? Whatsoever you do for the glory of God. I'm mopping my floors. I do it for him.
Yeah.
I'm with my kids. I do it for him. I'm helping a woman that needs her house cleaned and her brush, the hair taken off. I do it for him.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, because your whole life is serving him. Your whole life is ministry. Yeah. Ministry is not a separate thing.
Yeah.
Our life is to pour out.
That's so good. What about peace? How do you find peace on a day-to-day basis?
Well, for some of my days, it's been very difficult,
Yeah.
very hard. Cast all your cares upon him.
Yeah.
Stop carrying what he's telling you to cast.
That's
Like
good. Stop carrying what he's telling you to
cast. Yeah, like when a fisherman, he takes the net and he throws it away from the boat.
Yeah.
Stop, cast it off you. His shoulders are bigger and broader.
Yeah.
So when I know I'm overwhelmed, I have to cast those things because I literally look at it. It's sin if I'm not. He's commanding me. And why? Because he cares for you.
Yeah.
And when you cast, when you spend time with the Lord and you're honest with him,
Yeah.
and you cast and say, God, I don't know how I'm going to pay this bill.
Yeah.
I don't know how I'm going to get through this day. I'm really hurting.
Yeah.
Somehow it's the peace that surpasses all understanding. It guards your heart and mind. But as long as your heart and mind is not casted,
Yeah.
throwing it on him.
Yeah. So good. Last question. What is your greatest worship that has become your weapon? Like, would you say that it is your intercession?
Yeah, I think intercessory prayer. The night before we did the women's meeting, we haven't done one since 2019. I was terrified. So many accusations, just. And what do? I go on Zoom to the prayer band. And they intercede, and I am weeping. I mean, I have liquid coming out of every part of me. And I know that's where it's at.
Yeah.
Like for your intercession is your music. That's intercession. It's intercession.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
The guy on the drums, anointed, that's his intercession.
Yeah.
The singers, the psalmists, that's their intercession.
Yeah.
That's our intercession. The preacher, that's your intercession. It's the breaking through of the strongholds of the walls. Who are you, great mount, that you should not bow low?
Yeah.
Jesus has broken the curse. He's never lost a battle.
Yeah.
Who wrote that, Rita Springer? Who wrote those words?
Yeah. Wow.
When I thought I lost me, you know where I left me.
Yeah.
Intercession.
You think it's important for everyone to find their weapon?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We all have a weapon.
Yeah.
Your weapon may be hospitality, disarming people. Your weapon may be giving.
Yeah.
Your weapon may be great patience.
Yeah. That's so good.
It is. And it's all different.
Yeah.
But it's all the breaker of strongholds.
So good. So good. Thanks, Maria.
Love you,
You're the
Rita.
best.
Are you ready to eat lasagna?
Yeah, let's eat some
let's
lasagna.
Come on.